Hey all. So, I don't ever make like videos or anything, but I was just making some observations while I was editing my Steam profile today that I really felt like I wanted to talk about and share and just put it out somewhere at least. Um, I was looking for specifically like backgrounds for like my mini profile background and whatnot. Like let's see, like we've got I guess if you just look here, you've got your profile backgrounds, you've got mini profile backgrounds, and we'll get to this in a second. Um, and honestly, when I was just looking and searching through them, it kind of just filled me with worry and almost like mix of like disappointment and almost like existential dread for the future. Because let me show you what I mean. So I was looking at these animated mini profile backgrounds because I just wanted something cool. And okay, so right off the bat, you'll notice that the very first one is this like scantily clad anime cat girl with her boobs right out in your face, making a wooga sexy face, whatever the kids call it. Um, and like that was just to me like okay, that's kind of gross, but it's gaming. There's a lot of incels and degenerates and whatnot that like stuff like that, so I kind of understand. And then like this one over here is an anime woman, of course, but not anything too crazy. But I keep scrolling through, like another anime girl, not like anything like gross, but it's an anime girl, whatever. And like there's some like cool badass stuff. You got a skull with a knife through it, some edgy stuff. But you keep looking and it's just anime girl after anime girl. Like there's this one, whatever. Like again, that one's not particularly gross, but like, and there's this freaking lolly girl over here, and I don't even want to talk about that. But, you know, and another skull. You just keep looking, and it's just more and more just anime girls. Like I don't think I remember having a single one of these like uh mini pages or whatever that didn't have at least one anime girl profile background on it. Like of course there's this girl with a gun, and like some of them are worse than others. Like that one's not too bad. That's just, someone with a gun, whatever. But like when you start really digging it, that's when you start getting the really worrying material. Like got this one, whatever, and like again, whatever. Kind of lolly bait, whatever. And of course, this one, huge boobah cat girls. Like that doesn't really surprise me that much. It's still just disappointing to see more little girls. And these right here, they really worry me because I know there's some people are just like, oh my god, it's just anime children, it's cute, but they're always girls, and it's alongside women that are being extremely sexualized. So, and it's similar art style, just different bodies. And that makes me worry that, it's essentially lolly pedophile bait, whatever you want to call it, um, that people are just, getting for their Steam profiles, and that, I guess Steam is completely okay with people having. And it's not like this is anything inappropriate, like per se. It's just like you got to think about why it's here, the kind of people who want this stuff. Like like a little girl with kind of a short dress and thigh highs. Like I know like, Japan has a different culture than us, so maybe like their clothing standards are different. But like you got to think like who is this for? You got to think who would be the kind of person that would want to see this on their profile? Like, do you think it's just gonna be people who are just like, oh, I think kids are cool, or do you think it's someone who's like sexualizing them? I mean, at this point, maybe like that's just like a conversation of yesteryear and it's already obvious. But to me, I see it and that's just worrying that that's just like something that's just so out in the open now. And like you keep looking. This one actually didn't have any anime girls, surprisingly enough. Some cool cockroaches though, so I appreciate that. I think I've gotten past most of it. Yeah, no sus things here. Some cool car stuff. Another anime girl, and this is obviously supposed to be very very I don't know the words. It's supposed to be very tantalizing to the incel, I guess. Her. And obviously it's kind of cut off, but it's obviously supposed to be her ass out in a very what's the word I'm looking for? Like you know what dogs and cats do when they're ready to breed. That's what she's doing here. And I mean, obviously it's a cat girl, so that's kind of the point. And it's just like stuff like that. Like sexy demon lady. So this is for the guys that wanna bang the cat girls, and then this is for the guys that want to be dominated by the demon ladies. But regardless, it's pretty apparent that all this gross stuff is here. It's just it's just easy to see a trend though so fast where it's just a bunch of anime ladies. So like, besides the fact that it's you know kind of creepy how obsessed, like, um I guess online gaming culture is with specifically Japan. Like, that's kind of weird, but like whatever, people really like the art style. But what gets me is the fact that like it's almost exclusively like these scantily cladded girls. But anyways, even though I would not consider myself like any sort of feminist or something like that, I still do look at this stuff and I'm just like, man, this is just kind of straight up like objectifying and I guess sexist, if you will, where it's just like all you're doing is you're just looking on Steam for some cool stuff for your profile, and it's just soft core porn all over the place. And it'd be one thing if it like was like both men and women being sexualized, but it's only exclusively women. Like, granted, obviously, gaming is more of like a male thing to do. It's like, it seems, just based off of population that does it. But still, it's just kind of weird, I guess. That like, and I feel like that has to detract women who might want a game when they look at stuff like this and they think it's just a bunch of incel creeps, and they're like, I don't think that's the kind of crowd that I want to be in. It's a bunch of pervs, because like, how could you not think that when this is the sort of stuff that's in your front pages? Like, the very first one that shows up here is this, and that's one of the most sexual um, profile backgrounds here. It's the very first one, you know? So, and, this kind of stuff being all over the place is just kind of rotting the brains of, our youth and the people, who do play games and whatnot. So not just the youngins, but, people, I guess, just at whatever age brackets playing video games, because they're just constantly being exposed to stuff like this. Like, essentially, I know all this is just profile backgrounds. I'm kind of, obsessing over this, but what I'm getting at is this is more of a microcosm for, our gaming culture, and you could even say Western culture, and or American culture, whatever. But it you just got to think that this sort of stuff is just become normalized, um, amongst the population, where like it's completely normal to just see stuff like this, you know, when you're scrolling through, um, a website like Steam. And I think that's a problem. I feel like stuff like this, I don't know, however many years ago, would have been looked down upon. Like, if you like openly like stuff like that, or like, uh, you know, showed that stuff off, people would look at you like you're a freaking troglodyte. Like, you just sit inside and watch, these um degenerate animes, and play video games all day. But now stuff like this is just really starting to seep out and become super public. I mean, anyone here who's gone outside before and you know been like maybe in like a shopping mall or goes to college or something like that, I'm sure that y'all have definitely seen people wearing, their like anime girl shirts or whatever that's extremely sexualized and like your stickers on your cars and stuff. And you just see this stuff everywhere. And it's not good. It's really bad for you because you're just constantly seeing women and immediately associating it with sexual appeal. Now, obviously, if you're a straight man, you are biologically and genetically, whatever, going to be sexually attracted to the female um, gender. That's just how it works. But if every time you see a woman, it has to do with sex, you know, that's programming your brain to not think of women, as another human, as, someone with, their own mind and soul and everything who has their own purpose in life. You just see them as sex objects just to be used by, you or other men. And, um, I think it's honestly kind of creating a positive feedback system where I think it's just getting worse and worse, where because it's becoming normalized and more people are being brainwashed by this stuff, they're seeing it more and more because it's more openly okay to have stuff like that, just out and about. And I'm hoping that unless there's some societal changes soon where some people start to realize how bad this stuff is for you, that we're just going to see this softcore porn and even worse just all over the place. And it's going to create a society where I feel like women aren't going to be comfortable because, you know, women who don't want to be constantly looked at as a sex object are going to be uncomfortable because they're going to feel like men are constantly just looking at them in that regard because those same men in question are just constantly looking at stuff like this. Um, or, those women are going to have to, I guess, concede, if you will, and buy into that and, expose themselves and be not what's that word that people are using now? This might not age well, but demure, whatever, you know. And I think it's going to be just good for barely anyone. I mean, and it's not even bad just for the women. It's bad for the men too because it's destroying their brains to where they're just so used to seeing stuff like this with just these ladies with like their ideal like these ideal bodies with these giant secondary sex organs, um where they're gonna constantly just like think that that is the ideal female body. I mean, I guess like I said, it's kind of the like idealized female body, but like they're going to think that that's the ideal body for them to look after, and it's going to make their standards so damn high that's going to be hard for them actually to find a partner, or if they do find a partner because it's their partner's attractiveness is going to be so below what they're used to seeing, it's going to be hard for them to sexually perform, and that's why you're going to have stuff like, erectile dysfunction. I mean, erectile dysfunction is already on the increase in, at the very least, America, and so many people have been quick to link that to pornography use, which I am one to agree with. And I mean, just like think of like even if you're not looking at like the scientific data, just think about this logically speaking. If you are someone who, is just constantly seeing these women with giant asses and tits and everything everywhere, and then you actually get an opportunity to uh, have sex or relations with a woman, and she's not nearly as attractive as what you're used to seeing all the time. Do you think that you're going to be able to perform as well as you might otherwise? Like, I think that the answer is pretty obvious that no, you're probably not gonna perform as well as you would otherwise. To make an analogy, like imagine if you were someone who only ever ate like super sugary foods, like say like you just had dessert all the time, just you ate like ice cream, cookies, Oreos, whatever, constantly. That was what your diet consisted of, regardless of like any of the health implications. And say one day someone tries giving you some actual like regular food. Maybe they try giving you, I don't know, like some meatloaf or asparagus, whatever suits your fancy. Just like regular like meat and vegetables or that sort of, and carbs, that sort of thing. Like some actual bread instead of Oreos or ice cream, you're getting just regular bread. Do you think that like that food would be nearly as appetizing? It, I don't think it would be, because you've programmed your body to crave sugar at this, such high capacity, that anything that doesn't have that much sugar in it is just going to be unappetizing, because you've gained such a high tolerance for that sort of stuff, because that's become your new baseline. And that's kind of what it's about. It's about increasing your baseline. When you raise your baseline for what you find sexually attractive by looking at stuff like this, um, it's going to make it so much harder for things that would, be normal otherwise, to reach that baseline, if that makes sense. Like when you raise your baseline for what you find sexually attractive, it's going to make it harder for things to reach that reach and surpass that baseline. Therefore, it means that there are going to be less women, less opportunities, less things that you are sexually attracted to. And therefore, you have like erectile dysfunction and stuff. And I just think that that is immediately become apparent in just simply looking at something like profile backgrounds on Steam. And I know that this is a culture where that sort of stuff is much more normalized. If you were to like look at like just like, I don't know, job websites and I don't know, and like say, let's say you're to look at like culinary websites and stuff, you're not going to see stuff like this. But regardless, this sort of material is just becoming way more and more prominent on the internet as a whole. And as gaming becomes way more prominent amongst the population, which it has been, then more people are just constantly getting exposed to this. And, they're getting their porn addictions are becoming normalized, and the standard for mental health is therefore being lowered, because it's becoming normal for people to have crippling porn addictions, and therefore more predisposed to erectile dysfunction once they actually get a relationship. And even then, for them to actually get a relationship in the first place, it's going to be more difficult because of stuff like this, because, they're not going to know how to actually interact with women, because of the fact that they're only looking at them as sex objects. And if you only look at someone as a sex object, not an actual person, it's going to be a lot harder to actually have genuine conversations and actually get to know them. So, once again, harder for you to actually get to know these people and actually get into a relationship. And then once you are there, even if you do get there past that barrier, it's still going to be harder to maintain that relationship happily, because it still might be a delayed problem where as you get to know each other more, you get more used to each other because of how the human brain works with, newness being a key factor with finding something attractive. Like, it's like imagine if you're, the first time you eat something versus the 10th time you eat it. It probably doesn't taste as good the 10th time. Same thing with, sexual attraction. And that's just how it goes. But so if your baseline for sexual attraction is raised really high, even though you might, still find that person sexually attractive at the start of the relationship, because luckily you still have that newness in play. Say maybe after you get married or you've been together for years or something like that, as the perceived sexual attraction for your partner starts lowering slowly over time, they might eventually actually dip below that baseline that you've created through your addictions or constant exposure to this sort of stuff. And at that point, that is horrible for a relationship to go that far in and then stop finding your partner attractive and just not be able to get it up anymore. God forbid you're married and have kids. And that stuff is going to be more likely because of just all the stuff that you see. Uh, not the tanks. I mean, unless you're sexually attracted to tanks, but the boobah women. We're getting less and less boobah women as we're going on, but they're still here. Don't worry, the boobah women are still here. To kind of sum it all up, this whole thing is a microcosm for some of the problems that we're facing in society right now, where just constant exposure and normalization to over sexualized women and constantly seeing an idealized female form is going to have negative consequences for everyone, because it's going to have consequences for the women, because for the women it's going to be harder for them to find, partners, because there's going to be more people who are, indoctrinated to this culture that are going to be used to seeing stuff like this. Um, it's going to, I would have to imagine, create, self-consciousness amongst them, because, you know, they're constantly seeing this super ideal female form, and they're going to think to themselves, like, how can I look like that? Which is not possible. That's the whole point of this art and everything, is like, it's not realistic. I mean, some people you can argue have, close or do have similar bodies to like these anime characters and everything, but that's not like, but having these huge assets is the standard for this art. And that is not the standard for real life. It's simply not. So these women are going to have problems with that. They're going to be having to compete with these fictional characters. And that's just nuts. How do you compete with perfection, with something that's been handcrafted to be as sexually stimulating as possible? How do you compete with that? You just can't. It's going to make them feel uncomfortable. At least I would have to imagine, when they feel like they're constantly being sexualized all the time, because whenever you're seeing women, or at least in this art form online, they're being sexualized. And I personally would be uncomfortable if I was a woman and I just felt like that every man walking down the street was looking at me, judging me purely on sex appeal alone and not seeing me as an actual human. So it's going to make them uncomfortable. And for the men, it's going to make the men's lives harder, because it's going to be harder for them to find an actual partner, because their uh, their baseline for attraction is so much higher. So, and even if they do find a partner, it's going to be harder for them to actually get it up and actually be able to perform in bed, because, their girlfriend isn't a sexy maid cat lady. And it's going to make it harder for them to actually have genuine conversation and get to know women, when their brain is constantly used to just associating them to sex. Anyways, well, that wraps it up for my rant on profile backgrounds and its consequences on society. Thank y'all for listening, and don't consume this kind of media if you can help it. Try to remove yourself from this sort of behavior, and I hope y'all have a great week.